7 seconds, and that's all it took. You walked into a room and a party, any social setting. You hadn't said a word yet. You hadn't done a thing, and they already knew. The narcissist had already chosen you before you even opened your mouth. This isn't a coincidence, it's not bad luck, and it's definitely not paranoia. There's a documented neurological mechanism that explains why you, specifically you, were singled out before you even took your second breath in that room. Dr. Paul Conti, a psychiatrist who has appeared on the Huberman Lab podcast to discuss mental health and narcissism, revealed something most people completely overlook. Narcissists don't choose victims randomly. They're not rolling dice. There's an internal radar, a detection system honed by decades of emotional survival that pinpoints exactly who will serve their purpose. And here's the part that's going to disturb you. That radar detected something in you. Something you're not even aware you're emitting. Something Carl Jung called the golden shadow, and Andrew Huberman confirmed with neuroimaging. Hold on to that information, because it's going to completely change how you protect yourself. The first thing you need to understand is that a narcissist's brain functions radically differently than yours. Neuroimaging studies published in 2024 and 2025 show that people with narcissistic traits exhibit unique brain connectivity patterns. The amygdala, that region of the brain responsible for processing emotions and detecting threats, functions in a very specific way in them. In healthy individuals, the amygdala activates when there is real danger. When someone gives you a threatening look, when you're in a risky situation, it's an alarm system. In a narcissist, this amygdala has a different calibration. It's hypoactive when it comes to empathy. The narcissist literally does not process the suffering of others the same way you do. And here's the crucial point. It's hyperactive to anything that threatens their self-image, or that could serve as a source of validation. Think about that for a second. The narcissist's brain is constantly scanning the environment, not to detect danger, but to detect supply, to find who can feed that internal void they carry. And this scanning happens in milliseconds, before any words are spoken, before any conscious interaction. Dr. Paul Conti explained on the Huberman Lab podcast that narcissism is fundamentally characterized by a deficit of pleasure and a profound envy. The narcissist experiences a constant hunger, a feeling that others have something they lack, and that hunger creates a radar. Now, think about the other side of the equation. Think about you. If you're watching this video, you're probably what we might call a highly sensitive person. Maybe you're what popular culture calls an empath. Maybe you're simply someone who grew up learning to read emotions in others before taking care of your own. And here's what recent neuroscience has discovered about you. Highly sensitive people show increased activity in the anterior insula, a brain region linked to body awareness and the perception of emotional states. They have elevated connectivity in the default mode network, the brain network associated with self-reflection and processing meaning. And crucially, they emit nonverbal signals that are practically invisible to most people, but that shine like a beacon to those who are hunting. The narcissist didn't choose you despite you being sensitive. They chose you because you are sensitive. Because the configuration of your nervous system emits exactly the type of frequency that their radar is programmed to detect. Hold on. Because what Carl Jung discovered about this over 100 years ago will explain exactly why this dance happens. Carl Jung developed the concept of the shadow to describe the parts of our psyche that we repress, the parts we don't want to see, the aspects of ourselves that we throw into the basement of the unconscious because they don't fit the image we want to project to the world. But Jung also spoke of something less well known, the golden shadow. The golden shadow contains not only our repressed negative aspects, but also our talents, our light, our potential that we had to hide to survive. And Jung noticed something fascinating about how people with different shadow configurations are drawn to each other. The narcissist and the empath are what Jung would call complementary shadows. They fit together like pieces of a toxic puzzle, because each carries in their unconscious exactly what the other has repressed. The narcissist has repressed their vulnerability, their ability to feel genuinely, their fragile humanity. These things were so painful in their childhood, so punished, so rejected, that they buried them completely and built a mask of invulnerability over them. The empath, on the other hand, has often repressed their power, their ability to say no, their right to have their own needs. These things were also punished in childhood. Maybe you learned that being noticed was dangerous, that having needs was selfish, that your function was to take care of others. When these two psychic structures meet, what Jung described as a mutual shadow projection happens. The narcissist sees in the empath everything they have buried, all that authentic vulnerability that they cannot access in themselves, and that vision awakens a hunger, a need to consume, to possess, to destroy what they cannot be. And the empath? The empath sees in the narcissist that mask of confidence, that apparent security, that power they themselves have repressed, and they feel an attraction, an unconscious hope that, by being near that power, maybe they can finally claim their own. This psychological dance happens before any words are exchanged. It happens at the level of the unconscious, at the level of the body, at the level of those 7 seconds. And here is the neuroscientific validation that proves that Jung was describing a real phenomenon. Researchers have found that nonverbal communication is processed by the brain approximately half a second before words. Your nervous system is constantly sending and receiving signals that never reach consciousness. Facial micro-expressions are decoded instantly by another person's brain, outside the realm of conscious perception. The narcissist, with that amygdala hyperactive to sources of supply, is processing your nonverbal signals extremely efficiently. The posture of your body, the way you hold your shoulders, the pattern of your breathing, the micro-expression that crosses your face for thousandths of a second when you enter a new environment. All of this tells a story about you. A story you don't even know you're telling. A story that tells the narcissist exactly what they need to know. Studies from 2025, using brain connectivity analysis, have shown that narcissistic traits are associated with specific activation patterns in the medial prefrontal cortex and the amygdala. These regions work together to process social information and make decisions about who is useful, who is a threat, who can be of service, and the disturbing parties. This evaluation happens automatically and unconsciously. The narcissist isn't sitting around coldly calculating who their next victim will be. Their brain simply does it, just like your brain calculates distance before you grab an object, without you consciously thinking about physics. Now, you understand why it wasn't a coincidence. But here's the question you need to ask. Why is this hidden? Why hasn't anyone told you about this detection mechanism? Part of the answer lies in the academic bias that still exists against Carl Jung. Many modern researchers completely disregard his work because he talked about concepts like the collective unconscious that seem too mystical. They prefer to pretend that psychology began with behaviorism or with cognitive neuroscience. But the truth is, Jung mapped these patterns of toxic attraction over a century ago. He documented how personas and shadows are drawn to each other, how psychic opposites seek each other out, not for love, but for compensation, how destructive relationships often begin with a magnetic attraction that feels like destiny, but is actually the unconscious trying to resolve its conflicts through the other person. And modern neuroscience is finally proving that he was right all along. Another part of the answer is that this information isn't convenient. It's not comfortable telling people that they are emitting signals that make them targets. It feels like victim blaming. It feels like we're saying it's your fault you were chosen, but that's not it. It's not your fault. You didn't choose to have this neurological configuration. You didn't choose to grow up in an environment that taught you to repress your power and amplify your receptivity to others. You were shaped by circumstances you didn't control. What you can control from this moment forward is what you do with this information And that brings us to the protection protocol. That combines Carl Jung and Andrew Huberman. The first step is recognizing your emission pattern. Highly sensitive people often have a characteristic body posture, shoulders slightly curved inward, a gaze that seeks the gaze of others to calibrate safety, breath that subtly changes depending on the energy of the environment. These aren't defects, they are intelligent adaptations that your nervous system developed, but they are also the signals that the narcissistic radar detects. Andrew Huberman talks extensively about how body posture affects not only how others perceive you, but how your own brain processes emotions. When you consciously expand your posture, when you take up more space, you're sending signals to your own nervous system that you are safe, and simultaneously, you are changing the signals you emit to the environment. The second step comes directly from Carl Jung. It's the work of golden shadow integration. You need to reclaim those parts of yourself that have been repressed, your power, your right to have needs, your ability to say no without guilt. This doesn't happen overnight. It's a process, but every time you recognize a situation where your instinct said no and you said yes, you are identifying an area where your golden shadow is buried. Every time you catch yourself giving in to avoid conflict, you are seeing the face of your repressed power. The third step is what Andrew Huberman would call nervous system modulation. Practices like the physiological sigh, which is a double inhale followed by a long exhale, can calm the nervous system in real time. This is important because the narcissist detects states of activation. When you're anxious, your body emits different signals than when you're centered. It's not about faking it. It's not about wearing a mask. It's about really changing your internal state so that the signals you emit naturally are different. The fourth step is the practice of mindful observation. Before interacting in social environments, take a moment to observe who is present. Notice who seems to be scanning the environment, who seems to be seeking something. The narcissist's attention has a specific quality. It's an attention that consumes, an attention that is evaluating what it can extract. With practice, you start to recognize this quality of attention before it's directed at you, and the simple act of recognizing changes the dynamic. Because you're no longer being scanned without knowing it. You're observing the observer. The fifth step is the most difficult. It's accepting that you will always be seen by narcissists. The sensitivity you carry isn't going to disappear. The light you emit is part of who you are, and trying to extinguish that light so you won't be seen would be a greater betrayal than any narcissist could commit against you. The goal isn't to become invisible. It's to become conscious. It's to know what you emit. It's to choose who has access. It's to recognize the radar before it locates you, and when it does locate you, because eventually it will. It's to have the internal structure, not to be consumed. Carl Jung wrote, that individuation, the process of becoming whole, includes integrating our vulnerability and our power. It's not about eliminating sensitivity. It's about adding strength to it. It's not about ceasing to shine. It's about shining in a way. That doesn't invite predators. And Andrew Huberman, with all his science of protocols and optimization, confirms the same principle in a different way. You can't completely control how others perceive you, but you can control your internal state, and your internal state modifies the signals you emit, and the signals you emit determine who you attract. The circle that connects all of this is deeper than you imagine. When Carl Jung wrote about shadow projection, he was describing a phenomenon that happens constantly between all people. We project onto others what we can't see in ourselves. What we love in them is often what we repress in ourselves. What we hate in them is often what we deny in ourselves. But between the narcissist and the empath, this projection reaches an extreme level because both have very dense shadows. Both have repressed central aspects of who they are, and when these dense shadows meet, the attraction is magnetic. The narcissist projects onto the empath their own denied vulnerability. He sees in that sensitive being everything he had to kill within himself to survive. And that vision sparks two simultaneous impulses: the impulse to possess, to have that vulnerability that he can't access internally, and the impulse to destroy, to annihilate what reminds him of what he lost. This is why the narcissistic cycle begins with intense idealization and ends with brutal devaluation. The narcissist is trying to resolve an internal conflict through you. First, he idealizes you because you represent what he has lost. Then he destroys you because you remind him of what he can never be. And the empath? The empath projects their own repressed power onto the narcissist, sees in that mask of confidence a promise. If I stay close to him, maybe I'll absorb that strength. If I love him enough, maybe he'll teach me to be like that. If I heal him, maybe I'll heal myself. But here's the tragedy. That power you see in the narcissist is not real. It's a persona, a mask built upon deep wounds. And you're trying to reclaim your own power through someone who doesn't actually possess it. Neuroscience confirms this brutally. Studies show that the prefrontal cortex of people with high narcissism exhibits a typical functioning. The prefrontal cortex is responsible for emotional regulation, decision-making, considering consequences. When this region functions differently, the person appears to have a confidence that is actually an inability to adequately process risks and impacts. You're projecting power onto someone who actually has a processing deficit. The confidence you see isn't integrated strength. It's an absence of certain neurological breaks. And that's why you need to stop seeking your power in other people. The Jungian work of individuation is exactly this. It's collecting the projections. It's realizing that everything you admired or feared in others, you carry in potential within yourself. It's integrating the fragmented parts of the psyche into a coherent whole. As Carl Jung explained so clearly, when you do this work, when you reclaim your own strength without needing to find it reflected in someone else, something interesting happens. You still emit light. You're still sensitive. But the signals that accompany that sensitivity change. The narcissist detects vulnerability as a target, but vulnerability with integrated power doesn't present itself in the same way, doesn't emit the same signals, doesn't trigger the same radar. It's like the difference between an injured animal and an animal at rest. Both may be still, both may seem calm, but the predator knows the difference. The injured body emits signals of availability. The rested body emits signals of presence that don't invite attack. This doesn't mean you become invulnerable. It means you change the frequency. And with a different frequency, you attract different people. There's a question that hangs over all of this. If the narcissist detected you in 7 seconds, is there any way for you to detect them first? The answer is yes. And it's also at the intersection of Carl Jung and neuroscience, as discussed many times on the Huberman Lab podcast with Andrew Huberman. The narcissist has a characteristic attention pattern. It's an attention that evaluates, an attention that seeks. When you enter a room, most people notice you and move on with their lives. Their attention passes through you and continues to other things. The narcissist's attention sticks. It remains. It studies. Not because you're especially interesting to everyone, but because you're especially interesting to him, because your radar went off. If you pay attention, you can feel this quality of attention. It's different from genuine interest. Genuine interest has a curious, open quality. The narcissist's attention has a consuming quality. As if he's trying to absorb something from you just with his gaze, your nervous system, if you learn to listen to it, already knows the difference. That subtle discomfort you feel when someone looks at you in a certain way. That inexplicable urge to protect yourself. That feeling that something isn't right, even when there's nothing objectively wrong. Andrew Huberman talks about interoception, the ability to perceive internal signals from the body. The anterior insula of the brain processes these signals, and highly sensitive people often have increased activity in this region. The problem is that many empaths have learned to ignore these signals. They grew up in environments where their perceptions were invalidated, where they heard they were exaggerating, that they were imagining things, that they were too sensitive. So they turned off the alarm. And now, when the narcissist's predatory attention finds them, they don't trust their own perception. They feel the discomfort and rationalize it. They perceive the danger and ignore it. Reconnecting with this bodily intelligence is crucial. It's not about being paranoid. It's about trusting that your nervous system evolved for millions of years to detect threats. And if it's firing, there's a reason. The practice is simple, but requires consistency. Before entering social environments, take a few seconds to notice how your body is, what your baseline state is. Then, as you interact with different people, note the changes. With whom does your body relax? With whom does it contract? With whom do you feel expansion? With whom do you feel retraction? Don't try to explain it rationally. Just note it. Over time, you start to build a map of patterns. And this map protects you because it allows you to act before the cycle begins. There's a specific moment in the encounter between narcissist and empath that determines the course of everything. It's the moment of the test. Every narcissist tests their targets. They do this unconsciously, by default. The test can be subtle, a slightly critical comment, a small request that crosses a boundary, a microaggression disguised as a joke. The purpose of the test is to measure your response. The narcissist wants to know if you'll give in, if you'll apologize for something you didn't do, if you'll minimize your discomfort to keep the peace, if you'll prioritize their comfort over yours. And here's the bifurcation point. If you pass the test from their perspective, that is, if you give in, they know they found a viable target. The radar was right. This person can be manipulated if you fail the test. That is, if you maintain your boundary with tranquility, something interesting happens. Often, the narcissist loses interest, not completely, but the magnetism diminishes. Because the radar detected vulnerability, but the test didn't confirm availability. This is counterintuitive for many empaths. They think that if they're kind enough, understanding enough, loving enough, they'll achieve a different outcome. But kindness without boundaries is exactly what the narcissist is looking for. Carl Jung would say that holding your boundary in that moment is an act of individuation. It's choosing your own center over the approval of another. It's telling your own unconscious that you have value. That doesn't depend on pleasing others. Dr. Andrew Huberman would say that this moment activates different neural circuits, depending on how you respond. If you give in, you reinforce the pattern of submission. If you hold your boundary, you start to create a new pattern of self-preservation. Both are describing the same thing, from different angles, and both are giving you the same instruction. Protect your center, hold your ground, don't negotiate your integrity for acceptance. But what if you're already in a cycle with a narcissist? What if you've already been captured and you're trying to get out? The process of getting out is a process of forced individuation. You're going to have to reclaim parts of yourself that were taken. You're going to have to recognize the projections that kept you trapped. You're going to have to build a sense of self that doesn't depend on the validation of someone who will never genuinely validate you. This is painful. I'm not going to pretend it isn't. The brain's dopamine system creates strong bonds with intermittent rewards, and the narcissistic cycle is a perfect machine of intermittent reward, moments of idealization, followed by periods of neglect, followed by more idealization. It's exactly the pattern that creates the strongest addiction. Studies show that it takes approximately 90 days for the brain to begin to reshape its reward patterns after the end of a traumatic relationship. 90 days of awareness, 90 days of different choices, 90 days of resisting the impulse to go back. During those 90 days, you're going to feel withdrawal. You're going to feel that hunger for the contact that your brain has associated with pleasure. There will be moments where you'll question, if it really was that bad. You'll romanticize the good parts and minimize the bad parts. This isn't weakness, it's neurology. Your brain is struggling to maintain a pattern that it's learned, generates dopamine. It doesn't know that this pattern is also destroying you. Carl Jung's shadow work is crucial here because part of what keeps you trapped is the projection. You're still seeking something in them that's actually in you. Until you reclaim that part, you're going to keep being drawn back. Question for you, watching this right now. Have you ever felt that magnetic attraction to someone your body knew was dangerous? Have you ever ignored your own signals because the intensity felt like love? Tell us in the comments, not just as a rant, but as a mapping exercise. How long did it take you to realize? What finally made you see? This isn't just sharing experiences, it's building collective awareness about a pattern that affects millions of people. And if this content is making sense to you, if you're seeing connections you've never seen before, there's a way to support this work that allows us to continue making these revelations. You've just understood something that most psychology books don't put together: the connection between Jungian shadow projection and the neuroscience of vulnerability recognition. Researching this, connecting these sources, translating it into accessible language, takes time. A lot of time. When you click the golden heart of super thanks, you're not just supporting financially. You're saying that this type of content matters, that it's worth going deeper, that you're part of a community that wants to understand, not just consume. Each super thanks funds the next research project, the next protocol, the next connection. That can change the life of someone who's trapped in a cycle they don't understand. Think for a second about how much it's worth to understand why you always attract the same people. How much it's worth to have a map that shows you exactly how your psyche and your body are signaling to predators. How much it's worth to know that there's a way out. If that's worth something to you, super thanks is a way to say it. And I'm going to keep delivering, because that's what I do. But knowing that there's a community that values this, that actively participates, makes a difference. Back to the central point, you were chosen before you opened your mouth, because there's a language prior to words, a language of bodies, of energies, of unconscious minds meeting. The narcissist is fluent in that language in a distorted way. They use it to hunt. You're also fluent in that language, but maybe you've never been taught to use it to protect yourself. You use it to care, to connect, to feel. Now it's time to use it to guard. Carl Jung mapped this territory a century ago. Dr. Andrew Huberman is validating it with brain scanners now. And you're in the middle with this information that can protect you if you choose to apply it. Remember those 7 seconds. Remember that you're always emitting. Remember that there's someone always scanning. And remember that the more conscious you become, the less automatic the process becomes. You can't control who looks at you, but you can control what you emit. And you can control how you respond. When someone's radar finds you, that's power. Not the false power of the narcissist, built on emptiness. The real power of someone who knows themselves, accepts themselves, and protects themselves without losing the ability to love. Carl Jung would call it individuation. Dr. Andrew Huberman would call it integrated self-regulation. I call it you finally occupying the space. That's yours by right. The 7 seconds are going to continue to exist, but now you know what happens in them. And knowing changes everything.